In the Battle of Gaixia, Xiang Yu was besieged on all sides, leaning against the Wujiang River to fight with blood and hard work. Farewell My Concubine, the King of Tyranny, is a timeless masterpiece. During the process of returning to the underworld after committing suicide, Xiang Yu's soul was summoned to the end of the Eastern Han Dynasty 400 years later using soul summoning techniques. The summoners were oppressed and in unbearable pain, so they used soul summoning techniques to make Xiang Yu's soul lose themselves, hoping to seek his help in revenge. However, after all, this is just an ordinary person's body, which is incomparable to the unparalleled power of Xiang Yu in his past life. Fortunately, Xiang Yu still carries memories from his past life and is still a military genius. His goal is not only to avenge the owner of this body, but also to avenge himself. It seems that Liu Bang's debt 400 years ago will be repaid by his descendants 400 years later. The world of the Han family will ultimately belong to me, Xiang Yu. What about Dongzhuo, Yuan Shao, Lv Bu, Cao Cao, Liu Bei, Sun Quan, and Guan Yu? In this era of rising heroes, how could it be without my role as Xiang Yu? Let's see how Xiang Yu has grown from a reborn ordinary person back into a generation of heroes, a generation of people who are proud of others. Keywords of the novel. Xiang Yu's Battle of the Three Kingdoms without a pop-up window. Download the complete text of Xiang Yu's Battle of the Three Kingdoms, and read the latest chapters of Xiang Yu's Battle of the Three Kingdoms. Chapter 1. Refining Skills. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Refining Skills. Xiang Yu stayed with Goatbeard Zhao Laosi for more than half a month. During this time, he often exchanged martial arts skills with Wu Ming. Zhao Laosi also made a pair of high-quality fine-scale armor and a steel spear for Xiang Yu as promised. However, because on the day Xiang Yu received this spear, thunder echoed in the sky, Xiang Yu named it the Thunderbolt Spear. With armor draped over his body and a long spear in his hand, Xiang Yu was like a tiger adding wings. Previously, he and Wu Ming were often just able to fight fiercely, but with this equipment, he gradually gained the upper hand. Xiang Yu's spear in his hand was like thunder and lightning, rolling and unstoppable, making it difficult to resist. Wu Ming was often beaten to the point of only being able to parry, making it difficult to fight back. However, during the confrontation with Xiang Yu, Wu Ming's combat skills also improved to a certain extent. He learned many combat skills from Xiang Yu that he had never known before. Although Wu Ming was very powerful, he had never actually gone to the battlefield to kill enemies. Therefore, in terms of combat experience, Xiang Yu was much more powerful than him. One of the important things Xiang Yu taught him was to maintain a high level of adaptability in the rapidly changing battlefield. Your enemy may appear anywhere, and you may need to face any unexpected situation. Your enemy may be composed of various people, so you must always be prepared and quickly grasp each other's strengths and weaknesses in the process of fighting against opponents. And this kind of adaptability is exactly what Wu Ming lacks. Of course, Xiang Yu cannot truly teach him this because it is actually a combat intuition that needs to be established in a large amount of practical combat. People with this talent may be able to master it a bit faster, but the vast majority of people do not have this ability. Originally, Xiang Yu wanted to take Wu Ming with him, but Wu Ming didn't seem willing to leave. He told Xiang Yu that Zhao Si, the bearded goat, had saved his life and brought him back to life. He had made up his mind to follow him all the time. Although there didn't seem to be much potential for development here, he still lived a relatively carefree life. After sparring with Xiang Yu for a while, he felt that he might not have the talent to go to the battlefield to fight. Of course, Xiang Yu couldn't tell him his true identity in his past life. It was not unfair for him to lose to him. If there really existed a 16 or 17-year-old boy in this world who could be as powerful as Xiang Yu now, he could no longer be described as a genius boy, it would be like a god of war descending to earth. The divine bravery of feathers is unparalleled throughout history. However, Xiang Yu's greatest strength lies not only in his martial arts skills, but also in his ability and courage to command the battlefield, which is difficult to learn even if one wants to. It requires some great courage and confidence to be able to control it. Imagine anyone facing enemies dozens or even more times. Deep down in their hearts, they can still burn the passion for battle while maintaining enough calmness, calmly commanding their soldiers to fight. Only those who can achieve this are slightly qualified to compare with Xiang Yu. Finally, it was time for Xiang Yu to leave. Before bidding farewell, Goatbeard Zhao Laosi gave Xiang Yu a lot of money. Xiang Yu once again thanked Zhao Laosi and left his military camp. Goat-bearded Zhao Laosi was in charge of the defense army in Chang'an City. After leaving him, Xiang Yu did not immediately leave Chang'an, and he felt both familiar and unfamiliar with the city. 400 years ago, at the end of the Qin dynasty, the capital city of the Qin dynasty was Xianyang City, which is now known as Chang'an. During these hundreds of years, this city suffered several major disasters and developments, and its appearance has long been different from before. The first major disaster that Xianyang City encountered happened to be bestowed by Xiang Yu. At that time, he led his army to burn down the city of Xianyang, which lasted for several months. The Qin Emperor's mausoleum was also destroyed by his army, and there was also the Aban Palace that only belonged to the sky. The past was like smoke, although it was vividly remembered, it was difficult to turn back. Xiang Yu led his army to attack Xianyang, which was the pinnacle of his life. Later on, he learned from the king of Zhou to enfeoff feudal lords, and as the hegemon of Western Chu, he became the leader of many feudal lords. At that time, he was truly proud and eager. How could he have imagined that he would eventually be defeated by Liu Bang, whom he had never looked up to? Of course, Liu Bang was not alone in defeating Xiang Yu. Those who defeated Xiang Yu included Liu Bang's generals and advisors, other feudal lords and kings appointed by Xiang Yu, and even those who were originally under Xiang Yu's command but ultimately left Xiang Yu and joined Liu Bang. They concentrated their strength together and finally defeated the Western Chu hegemon Xiang Yu. But what truly defeated Xiang Yu was not them, but Xiang Yu himself. It was his own arrogance, his own personality, his own choice, and his own step-by-step pushing himself into the abyss of failure. In this process, he had many opportunities to break free from the path to the abyss, but he repeatedly shook off those who wanted to save him, and walked alone towards that sad ending. Although his tragic experience always drew the lament of future generations, it was the most profound pain for Xiang Yu himself. He originally thought that death could end everything, end the shame of defeat, and that the end of life meant that everything in his life had been frozen. However, he was wrong. His soul never truly left this world, and even after death, he could not truly rid himself of those nightmares, those he had cast himself. But what methods can he use to save his own destiny? How can I free myself from endless regret and pain? He has realized that evasion cannot solve the problem. As a person who once suffered a disastrous defeat and lost everything, he no longer has the right to be arrogant, to say that he is invincible, and to look down on everyone else. Now, he can only rely on his own strength to reshape his former glory, and obviously, the challenge he needs to face this time seems to be far greater than before. He has lost the family and friends who can provide him with tremendous support. This feeling of having nothing makes him uncomfortable, but perhaps pain is exactly what he needs. Without experiencing this painful process, his soul cannot be completely redeemed and transformed. He cannot become a brand new Xiang Yu, someone who knows how to overcome his past weaknesses, someone who knows how to find the weaknesses of his opponents, someone who is no longer short-sighted, and someone who truly aspires to dominate the world. He told himself what he had done before, and now he still wants to do it. He also wants to do what he had never done before, for no other reason, because he is Xiang Yu. He is a true military genius, like a god of war. This time, he wants to completely release his military genius. No matter how powerful the opponent is, he should tremble when facing Xiang Yu. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Battle of Huaxiong. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Battle of Huaxiong. Xiang Yu stayed in Chang'an City for a few more days, during which he seemed to be searching for something. However, it seemed that in the end, he couldn't find what he was looking for. So he got up and headed north towards Bingzhou. Xiang Yu's journey north was relatively smooth. Although he had encountered some obstacles from mountain bandits during this period, he was able to easily defeat these bandits with his outstanding strength. The equipment given to him by Goatbeard Zhao Laosi was really useful. In this era, it is difficult for ordinary people to have the opportunity to obtain good armor. With the development of steel smelting technology, it has become relatively easy for people to obtain a weapon that is suitable for their hands. However, the cost and difficulty of casting armor are far greater than that of casting a weapon. A set of excellent armor can protect the user's life at critical moments, and some specially crafted armor can even withstand a large part of attacks from ordinary weapons. It is precisely because of the existence of these high-quality armor that those exceptionally skilled generals on the battlefield can achieve more enemies than one, and they will not be afraid of facing enemies far exceeding their own. After entering the area of Bingzhou, Xiang Yu clearly felt that the surrounding environment and climate had changed. 400 years ago, Xiang Yu had also visited this area of Bingzhou. The Great Wall of Qin Shi Huang passed through Bingzhou, and at that time, a large area outside the Great Wall was mostly grassland. However, with the continuous change of climate, a large area inside the Great Wall has also begun to become grassland. Xiang Yu took the introduction letter written by Zhao Laosi with a goatee and ran to Dong Zhuo's door. Dong Zhuo, like Zhao Laosi, initially had some doubts about Xiang Yu's strength. "I have read the letter Zhao Laosi sent me, in which he mentioned that you are exceptionally brave and surrounded by about 10 soldiers, and you are not your opponent. I know that Zhao Laosi often likes to talk big, so I still have some doubts about your true strength. After all, I don't care about idle people here. If you really have strength, then I will definitely entrust you with important responsibilities. But if you don't have that strength, then I'm sorry," Dong Zhuo said. After listening, Xiang Yu couldn't help but smile bitterly on his face. It seemed that another battle test was waiting for him. However, he still had absolute confidence in his own strength, so he said. "Dong Taisho's words are not false. I, Xiang Ji, was born between heaven and earth, and I am also a strong and upright man who wants to rely on my martial arts skills to make achievements. Therefore, even if Dong Taisho sends the strongest person from outside to compete with me, it is enough." Ha ha ha. Alright, it's bold enough. Regardless of whether you have such great skills or not, I really like your aura. But since you've said that, I'll let one of my tigers compete with you in the future. If you can withstand 10 rounds under his command, I'll also accept you as my general. What do you think?" Dong Zhuo said. Xiang Yu. Very good. Dong Zhuo's campus is located on a grassland, with a flat terrain. Surrounded by endless grasslands, herds of horses, cows, and sheep are scattered, and the sun is scorching in the sky, freely baking everything on the earth. Xiang Yu stood in the center of the school field, while opposite him stood a person who was 9 feet long, with a tiger body, wolf waist, and a leopard head and ape arm. He glared angrily at Xiang Yu, as if he wanted to devour him alive. Just by looking at his appearance, he knew that this person was a fierce and brave warrior. "Who will come? I, Huaxiong, will not slay nameless people," Huaxiong said. "My name is Xiang Ji, the halberd of the war halberd. It's hard to say who will be killed," Xiang Yu replied, holding the thunderbolt spear in his hand. Huaxiong took a step forward, holding a long-handled large knife, with its blade shining coldly in the sunlight. "Ignorant child and dares to be arrogant in front of me, take a knife from me." Huaxiong roared and launched the attack first. Huaxiong's cut was really powerful and heavy, as if he was preparing to split Xiang Yu in half from head to toe. Xiang Yu did not dodge, but raised his gun with both hands and directly used the handle to make the next Huaxiong's cut. However, his tiger mouth also felt a bit numb afterwards, but this thread did not affect his subsequent movements. Huaxiong was somewhat surprised that Xiang Yu was able to withstand his heavy strike head-on. What surprised him even more was that Xiang Yu was able to launch a counterattack immediately after receiving Huaxiong's strike. With both hands exerting force, he pushed the large machete that Huaxiong had cut backwards. Without preparation, Huaxiong was pushed back, unable to maintain his balance and retreated backwards. Subsequently, Xiang Yu's long spear was thrust out like the wind, and each thrust would bring a strong wind around him. Xiang Yu's fierce thrust actually made it difficult for Huaxiong to resist. Huaxiong sold a loophole and then drew his sword backwards, trying to distance himself from Xiang Yu. However, Xiang Yu had the upper hand and wouldn't let Huaxiong easily get rid of his attack. The thunderbolt spear often aimed at the weaknesses of Huaxiong's moves. In just a short period of time, Xiang Yu had already found the weaknesses in Huaxiong's moves, which had to be said to be quite powerful. Huaxiong was also considered a tiger general under Dong Zhuo's command. He had never encountered such a predicament in his daily life, let alone the fact that the opponent was just a tall and thin-looking young man. Xiang Yu withdrew the gun handle and gave Huaxiong some breathing time, but Huaxiong no longer dared to launch another attack on Xiang Yu rashly. His gaze also began to examine Xiang Yu in front of him. Although he was already impressed by Xiang Yu's previous shooting style, Huaxiong was also unwilling to let a young boy have the upper hand like this. In terms of his reputation, if it were rumored that he was beaten by a teenager without any fighting power, how could he continue to work under Dong Zhuo? You should know that Dong Zhuo has always been ruthless, and if he felt that he had turned bad, the consequences would be quite serious. There was a hint of coldness in Huaxiong's eyes, and he had already made up his mind that today, no matter what, he could not let the boy in front of him walk out of this grassland alive. "Kid, let's get on the horse and fight again." After Huaxiong finished speaking, he asked the people around him to lead his own warhorse, a black-brown warhorse with smooth fur all over its body and extremely smooth muscle lines. The warhorse that Xiang Yu received here looked thin and small, as if he had never been able to eat enough before. The fur on his whole body was also messy, and when he walked over, he even limped a bit, which was countless times worse than the BMW from Huaxiong. However, Xiang Yu also showed a nonchalant appearance and said, "War is war, I have nothing to fear." "Humph." Huaxiong snorted coldly, turned over and mounted his horse, wielding his sword to attack Xiang Yu. However, Xiang Yu had not yet mounted his horse, and he clearly wanted to take this opportunity to launch a surprise attack on Xiang Yu. Xiang Yu's skills were also extremely agile. With his feet exerting force, he quickly flipped over and mounted the horse, and then the whip fiercely swung towards the back of the horse. Under the strain of the slow horse, it also ran vigorously. Faced with a swift strike from Huaxiong, Xiang Yu once again chose to face it head-on. "You really don't know the height and thickness of the earth, but you dare to take this knife directly from me. I must cut off your head with this knife." Huaxiong silently thought to himself. With the help of the speed of the BMW under his crotch, this knife in his hand has accumulated strong strength. Even if you don't need to use a mop, most people are afraid that they can't take it, and even if they block it, they will be overturned under the horse. In his past life, Xiang Yu was not just a brute force. His horse fighting skills were extremely exquisite. Even in the face of enemy attacks from all directions, he was able to skillfully dodge attacks from the enemy, search for defensive loopholes, and then fiercely attack the enemy's loopholes. The flaw of Huaxiong lies in his direction of force when wielding his sword. Even if ordinary people know such flaws, they cannot make use of them. However, Xiang Yu is not. This small flaw has become the key to his use of force to counterattack Huaxiong. Huaxiong's sword was powerful and heavy. Xiang Yu did not directly take it with a gun, but cleverly used force to release it, guiding the force of the sword towards the side. Huaxiong had not noticed the problem at first, but when he felt his body tilting uncontrollably towards the side, it was no longer easy for him to control his body. Huaxiong was almost overturned by this force and fell off the warhorse. Fortunately, his core strength was strong enough, and his feet tightly gripped the back of the horse, barely stabilizing his body. However, this time, his powerful attack was clearly easily resolved by Xiang Yu. Huaxiong suffered a dark defeat, and his gaze towards Xiang Yu was even more murderous. Without any hesitation, he lifted his whip and swung it fiercely towards the back of the horse, causing the warhorse under his crotch to run wildly again. He also lifted his machete and aimed at Xiang Yu's head before slashing it. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Angry Slash of Huaxiong. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Angry Slash of Huaxiong. If it weren't for his lack of awesome, Xiang Yu might have killed Huaxiong long ago. However, Xiang Yu didn't really want to kill Huaxiong. He just wanted to defeat him. What he needed to do now was to prove his martial arts skills. If he really killed Dong Zhuo's beloved general, Dong Zhuo would not be very happy. Of course, if this Huaxiong is determined to die, Xiang Yu will also help him. In short, today we can either subdue this Huaxiong or directly destroy him, so as not to add unnecessary trouble to ourselves in the future. Faced with another attack by Huaxiong, Xiang Yu showed no fear in his heart. As a result, Xiang Yu and Huaxiong fought for dozens of rounds, but the two sides still had no clear winner. During this process, Dong Zhuo always stood not far away and watched. Originally, he was not prepared to personally watch the battle, because he never believed that Xiang Yu could catch a few moves in front of Huaxiong. He knew Huaxiong's personality and had no sympathy when facing the weak. He would definitely kill Xiang Yu directly. A battle with vastly different strength really couldn't lift his watching mood, however, perhaps because Xiang Yu's previous confidence had slightly moved him, and there had not been any major events happening recently, he ultimately decided to come and watch this battle. At the beginning, Dong Zhuo's attention was not yet focused on this battle. The grassland was originally very dry and hot, but he knew how to enjoy life. He was always accompanied by a group of servants, some holding fruits, some holding wine, and some holding fans. Dong Zhuo's slightly bulky body lay on the side of the observation seat, while the servants around him were constantly serving him. When he shifted his attention back to the battle in front of him, he was surprised to find that Xiang Yu was fighting back and forth with his top general Huaxiong. At this time, it was precisely when Xiang Yu and Huaxiong were mounted and engaged in fierce battles. He didn't look bad, but at first glance, he couldn't take his gaze away from the battle in front of him. Although Xiang Yu looked thin and weak, his speed and explosive power were strong. More importantly, his combat movements and postures were quite skilled, like a seasoned general, rather than a young man of only 16 or 17 years old. Dong Zhuo himself is also a person with many years of experience in setting up and killing enemies. He is certain that he will not misread. The combat state of the young man in front of him does not seem to be that of a young man with no combat experience. However, he cannot find any way to explain all of this. He can only define Xiang Yu as a peerless genius. The key is that the battle of this peerless genius is really exciting. Dong Zhuo's attention was completely focused on this. Although Huaxiong was a tiger general under his command, he vaguely began to feel that Huaxiong might not be a match for the young man in front of him. He even began to lean more towards hoping that Xiang Yu could achieve victory in this battle. When he saw the introduction letter written to him by Goatbeard Zhao Laosi, he basically treated the content of the letter as a joke. Now he finally believed it. With Xiang Yu's demonstrated combat prowess, not to mention dealing with a few bandits or ordinary soldiers, he may not be a match for 3 or 5 ordinary generals besieging him. Dong Zhuo, a genius like this, naturally enjoys it very much. However, at this moment, he also has some contradictions. The contradiction lies in whether to stop the battle between the two in front of him. After all, swords and knives have no eyes. Whether Xiang Yu or Huaxiong are injured, it is a considerable loss for him. However, the battle before him is too exciting, to the point that whenever he is ready to stand up and stop the battle, as soon as the words reached his throat, he was suddenly swallowed back by himself. He thought to himself, let me watch this kind of battle for a little longer. They have been fighting for so long, and there shouldn't be any problems if they fight for a while. It was with this mindset that Dong Zhuo always just stood by and didn't even say a word. The servants who were originally serving Dong Zhuo by his side, seeing Dong Zhuo so focused on the battle, also stopped their work and followed Dong Zhuo's gaze to see the battle in front of them. However, for a long time, Dong Zhuo did not realize that these servants had not fed him any fruit. There were one or two servants who were originally planning to speak up to attract Dong Zhuo's attention, but their words were basically taken lightly by Dong Zhuo. Later, other servants also stopped their behavior. After all, if they angered Dong Zhuo because it dampened his interest, with Dong Zhuo's personality, they would not have any good fruit to eat. Xiang Yu and Huaxiong have been fighting for at least 50 rounds, during which they have fought back and forth with each other. However, at this point, the physical fitness of both sides and the physical fitness of their horses have become important factors affecting the direction of the battle situation. Xiang Yu's physical fitness is obviously much better than that of Huaxiong, but the physical fitness of the warhorse under Xiang Yu's seat is completely inferior to that of the BMW under Huaxiong's seat. Some time ago, the slow horse Xiang Yu was riding showed signs of physical weakness. At this moment, it seemed difficult to support Xiang Yu's weight anymore, and his front hooves softened, causing the entire horse to tip forward. However, Xiang Yu was not able to prepare in advance, and his entire body fell forward with the horse's body. Despite this, Xiang Yu relied on his agile body to roll on the ground, unloading most of his strength. In addition, the ground on the grassland was relatively soft with weeds and mud, and Xiang Yu only slightly injured his arm, which was not a big deal. Upon seeing Xiang Yu fall off the horse, Huaxiong felt like a bald eagle smelling carrion, and once again fiercely whipped the horse's back. He picked up his machete and headed towards Xiang Yu to kill him. It was obvious that he had made up his mind today to kill Xiang Yu. Not to mention that this kid has been under his command for so long today, and his face is already very uncomfortable. Moreover, Xiang Yu looks so young and has such strong strength. God knows how terrifying he will grow into in the future, and it will inevitably threaten his position. Even if Xiang Yu takes revenge, his life will definitely be very difficult, so in his opinion, there is only one person alive between him and Xiang Yu today, and this person must be his Huaxiong. Xiang Yu gradually discovered Huaxiong's strong killing intent in the battle with him. In theory, Huaxiong's identity was already that of a general under the command of the governor of Bingzhou, while Xiang Yu was nothing now. Why did the other party insist on killing him? Faced with Huaxiong's determination to kill, Xiang Yu finally felt a surge of anger. He thought to himself, "You Huaxiong child, you are really living impatiently. Since that's the case, I will also show you the real killing skills." Xiang Yu's gaze had already undergone a certain change. Looking at Huaxiong charging towards him and the large machete in his hand, Xiang Yu had no fear at all. The distance was getting closer and closer, and when people around him saw this scene, their breath gradually froze. However, Dong Zhuo, who was completely focused on watching everything, seemed to finally realize something. At this point, he had regained his senses, and Xiang Yu had already fallen from his horse. Why didn't Huaxiong want to let him go? Dong Zhuo was both anxious and angry. He wanted to stop Huaxiong, but unfortunately, his current location was still some distance above the battlefield. Even if he shouted loudly, Huaxiong, surrounded by the sound of hooves, might not be able to hear him clearly. Can we only watch this genius boy die at the hands of Huaxiong? However, the final result was unexpected for everyone present. In this battle, one person did indeed fall, but the person who fell was not Xiang Yu. The thunderbolt in his hand penetrated Huaxiong's chest directly, and he flew straight out from his warhorse. After landing and making a few thrusts, he finally took his last breath. How could this be possible? What exactly happened? Did you feel dizzy? Everyone present couldn't believe what they saw. Dongzhuo's top tiger general, Huaxiong, died tragically under a skinny young man who looked only 16 or 17 years old. Xiang Yu walked slowly over and pulled the thunderbolt gun out of Huaxiong's chest. Blood gushed out further, staining Xiang Yu's armor red. Under the dazzling sunlight on the grassland, the blood red on his armor revealed a unique aura. No matter how much shock and disbelief were in the eyes of those around him, Xiang Yu seemed so calm and composed at this moment, as if killing such a fierce general was just a rare and ordinary thing for him. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Waiting for the Day. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Waiting for the Day. From then on, Xiang Yu replaced Huaxiong as a fierce general under Dongzhuo. Dongzhuo, who had witnessed Xiang Yu's strength with his own eyes, had a good idea of his strength. And because Bingzhou is close to the northern border, there are quite a few people such as Xiang Yu, Xianbei, Chang, etc. Dongzhuo, as the governor of Bingzhou, also has a considerable number of armed forces. Whether on the surface or in private, Dongzhuo has been recruiting troops and horses. When he was young, he met many foreign leaders. It is said that once several Chang leaders came to Dongzhuo's place as guests, and Dongzhuo slaughtered his cattle to entertain them. These Chang chieftains were greatly moved, and after returning, they even gathered thousands of various livestock to give to Dongzhuo. Later, due to the harassment of the Xiongnu people on the border, the governor of Liangzhou once conquered Dongzhuo. Dongzhuo led his troops to defeat the Xiongnu and was recommended by the governor of Bingzhou to join the imperial court. In the late years of Emperor Han, Dongzhuo served as the Yulin Lang. Later, the Xianbei people and the Chang people joined forces in rebellion, and Dongzhuo served as the commander of the army, defeating the rebellious enemies. Dongzhuo was known for his martial arts skills and was strong and capable of using 2 arrow pouches at the same time, and could bow from left to right while riding horses. During the reign of Emperor Ling Shiping, Dongzhuo eventually became the governor of Bingzhou and concurrently served as the governor of Hedong County. The geographical location of Bingzhou and Hedong County was very important, making it a key military defense area for protecting Chang'an and Luoyang. Dongzhuo's military power also became increasingly powerful. After becoming a general under Dongzhuo's command, Xiang Yu regained the opportunity to train and command the army. Dongzhuo was quite surprised to find that Xiang Yu not only had a genius-like strength in personal force, but also was exceptionally strong in training soldiers and leading them in battle. Even Dongzhuo gradually began to feel a hint of fear towards Xiang Yu, because Xiang Yu's military literacy was really amazing. In fact, Xiang Yu did not have any good opportunities to showcase his military strength. However, Dongzhuo himself is also a person who often leads troops to fight. He can really tell at a glance whether Xiang Yu has the strength, even if it's just through some small things. At first, Xiang Yu was actually worried that Dongzhuo might feel too strong and threaten him, so he didn't dare to use Xiang Yu to his full potential. However, later on, Dongzhuo showed an amazing belly. In fact, to some extent, Dongzhuo's personality is also quite atmospheric. Although sometimes he may show a state of capriciousness, Xiang Yu himself is very familiar with this. After all, my former self was actually this kind of personality. Xiang Yu, who had a rather atmospheric personality, met Dongzhuo, who also had an equally atmospheric personality. Although their relationship may not be very good, it was still acceptable. On the one hand, Dongzhuo also saw that Xiang Yu was not a thing in the pool, and it was feared that he would eventually leave Dongzhuo to seek greater development. However, on the other hand, Dongzhuo was indeed a person who cherishes talents, especially someone like Xiang Yu who excels in both personal martial arts and military combat. He even admired Xiang Yu from the depths of his heart. Even though Dongzhuo is several decades older than Xiang Yu at this time, he can still feel the maturity that Xiang Yu has shown far beyond his age. This is a person with strong personal opinions. For Dongzhuo, even if Xiang Yu cannot stay under his tutelage for a long time in the end, he still needs to establish a good relationship with Xiang Yu. Perhaps at some point in the future, the two of them can fight side by side in a different identity. Xiang Yu didn't think too much about it himself. His main focus was on his areas of expertise, which included continuing to hone his physical fitness and combat abilities, as well as training soldiers, or more precisely, cavalry. Previously, Dongzhuo captured a group of excellent war horses from a group of Xiongnu people. Therefore, Dongzhuo decided to train an elite cavalry unit, and Xiang Yu happened to become the commander of this cavalry unit. Dongzhuo witnessed Xiang Yu's cavalry and archery abilities, both of which were extremely exquisite. Dongzhuo himself was able to bow left and right on horseback, while attacking enemies with arrows from two quivers. He thought his skill was the only one in the world, but during a conversation, Xiang Yu learned about it. Later, Xiang Yu learned this skill in less than a week, and Xiang Yu's riding and shooting accuracy was actually higher than Dongzhuo's. Dongzhuo and Xiang Yu had a special competition, and at the beginning, they both shot fixed targets. In this project, their abilities were very similar, but when shooting moving targets, which were live objects, Xiang Yu's archery skills greatly surpassed Dongzhuo. Dongzhuo could only shake his head slightly and sigh, indicating that he was convinced to lose to Xiang Yu. Xiang Yu spent a year building this cavalry unit into a fairly elite force, and the composition of this cavalry unit was not only composed of the Han people, but also some Hu people, such as the Xiongnu, Xianbei, and Chang people. Some of them entered the territory of the Han Dynasty from their ancestors, while others surrendered to Dongzhuo in the recent rebellion. However, they all have one thing in common, that is having a very high talent and a young age. Dongzhuo saw that Xiang Yu was not very old, so he also thought of looking for young men who were also not very young but had good talents. Under Xiang Yu's leadership, they might gradually develop their potential. Of course, the disadvantage of such a unit is the lack of practical experience. Although the soldiers have high talents, they are still slightly immature. Now there is an opportunity for Xiang Yu and this young cavalry regiment to demonstrate their strength. A small group of southern Xiongnu forces has once again rebelled, and the scale of their rebellion is not large. They have not been able to gather many other southern Xiongnu forces. However, if they cannot quickly suppress this rebellion, other southern Xiongnu forces may also join in. Dongzhuo has always used an iron fist to suppress the rebellion of the Xiongnu people. Previously, he had achieved quite good results in suppressing the rebellion, making most of these southern Xiongnu people more honest. At least they would consider it more before deciding on a rebellion. So this time, this small group of Xiongnu forces rebelled, and other Xiongnu forces did not stand up to support him in the first place. In fact, an important reason is to see how Dongzhuo will act. If Dongzhuo still adopts the previous iron-fisted suppression method, they may not be willing to stand out too early. If Dongzhuo hesitates, if the rebellion of that small group of Xiongnu forces has achieved some gains, then these Xiongnu forces may seize the opportunity to surge and launch a larger-scale rebellion. After learning that the scale of the rebellion was not large, Dongzhuo decided to let Xiang Yu and the young cavalry he had trained serve as the main force to quell the rebellion, while Dongzhuo himself guarded the rear and did not personally participate in the rebellion. Xiang Yu and his young cavalry have long been waiting for such an opportunity to prove themselves. Therefore, upon hearing this news, they were extremely excited. For those who had never really fought on the battlefield before, their first battle in life was against the Xiongnu, which was quite good. Many of them have heard of the glorious deeds of Wei Qing and Huaxiong's northern expedition against the Xiongnu during the reign of Emperor Wu of Han in the previous dynasty since childhood. For them, being able to fight against the Xiongnu on the grassland like their ancestors one day can be considered a childhood dream. Moreover, they have such an outstanding commander as Xiang Yu. Xiang Yu's training for them is extremely strict on a daily basis. At the beginning, many new recruits found it difficult to adapt to Xiang Yu's high-intensity training, but after a period of time, the soldiers who were able to adapt grew their combat effectiveness extremely quickly. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Inquiring about one's background. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Inquiring about one's background. Xiang Yu has set some special regulations for his army, such as that they cannot change their horses and weapons freely during training. For example, their training is always once in the morning, once in the afternoon, and once in the evening. For example, each soldier must find another soldier as their companion, and this companion will progress together with him during training. They will be both their own partners and opponents. If they can progress together during training, Xiang Yu will reward them. They will first act as a small combat team and achieve excellent results in competition with others. Xiang Yu will reward them, and there will also be competition between them. The stronger one will receive additional rewards. Xiang Yu's reward system is diverse and not limited to this alone. On the other hand, Xiang Yu's punishment system is also very strict. Xiang Yu directly abolished some of the reward and punishment systems established by Dongzhuo, and replaced them with a completely new system based on his own reward and punishment system. In the new reward and punishment system established by Xiang Yu, if soldiers train and fight with all their might, their occasional mistakes can be accepted and compensated for. After about 2 years of training, the total number of young cavalry regiments under the command of Xiang Yu remained around 500. This time, Xiang Yu decided to bring the most elite 200 of them to suppress the rebellion. Originally, there were not many cavalry units of 500 people, and even these young men, including Dongzhuo, did not expect Xiang Yu to choose 200 from these 500 people. However, they also knew that Xiang Yu's personality was undeniable. As long as he spoke up, so much of the situation would be like this. Even if Dongzhuo personally told Xiang Yu, it would probably not be effective. Since only 200 out of the 500 people now have the opportunity to follow Xiang Yu to fight against the Xiongnu, these 500 people will definitely do their best to win the quota of these 200 people. When selecting soldiers, Xiang Yu also followed the previously set rule, using 2 people as a team. It is said to select 200 people, but more precisely, it is to select 100 teams. If your individual combat power is strong but your teammates are weak, your team is likely to fail. If neither you nor your teammates have particularly strong combat power, but you work together seamlessly and can inspire each other's combat power, then your team may have a great chance of winning. The fact is that Xiang Yu's selection of combat teams places the most emphasis on the comprehensive combat effectiveness between such 2 individuals. Fighting is not a chaotic battle on the streets and alleys, nor can victory be achieved solely by fighting alone. The more important thing is actually how to make a whole unit look like a strong whole on the one hand, and also have strong individual combat capabilities on the other. Xiang Yu considered that these soldiers were mostly new recruits in their teens, and the vast majority of them were first-time soldiers personally fighting on the battlefield. Even if they were well trained and witnessed intense battles in the real battlefield, they still developed a certain kind of huge fear from the depths of their hearts, which could never be overcome in a short period of time. And dividing these soldiers into 2 teams is to provide them with mutual support. In ordinary armies, there are usually 5, 10, 50 people, etc. as a whole, but Xiang Yu divides his army into 2 teams. He believes that using this method will definitely bring quite good results. Before leaving, Dongzhuo called Xiang Yu to his own mansion, and some of Dongzhuo's other advisors and generals were also in the mansion, which can be considered as a farewell for Xiang Yu before leaving. I love to have a halberd, and I wish you a smooth and successful journey. As soon as you finish speaking, Dongzhuo gulped down a bottle of wine, and after finishing it, a brilliant smile appeared on his face. I have great confidence in your martial arts skills, but this time in order to quell the chaos, besides showcasing your own martial arts skills, the more important thing is to prove the ability of the soldiers you have brought out over the past year. You see, I have so many talents under my command, and they are basically 1 to 2 generations older than you. So, if you want them to trust you like I do, you need to show your abilities, understand? Dong Zhuo smiled and spoke to Xiang Yu, looking as if an elder was patiently teaching younger generations. It was also evident that he truly valued Xiang Yu. Although you can rest assured, Mr. Dong, I will not disappoint your expectations. I will definitely go straight to attack these Xiongnu people's yellow dragons and subdue them again. Xiang Yu's tone was very firm, filled with some strong self-confidence. Okay. I just like your imposing demeanor. Come on, do it. Dong Zhuo and Xiang Yu had a big drink, and other generals around Dong Zhuo also toasted Xiang Yu. What a young hero. The speaker was Jia Su, one of Dong Zhuo's advisors. He walked up and said, General Xiang's name reminds me of a hero from 400 years ago. Upon closer examination, it seems that General Xiang's name and trade name are quite similar to him. He was the once invincible Western Chu hegemon Xiang Yu. Now, looking at the talents of the Xiang brothers, they must be descendants of the collateral lineage of the Western Chu hegemon Xiang Yu. With Jia Su's words, everyone, including Dong Zhuo, should take a look at me. Perhaps they were a bit familiar with Xiang Yu's name before, but for a while they couldn't associate it with Xiang Yu, the hegemon of Western Chu. Now that Jia Su's words have exposed it, there has been a slight change in their expression towards Xiang Yu. Xiang Yu's face remained as usual, as if pondering something. After Jia Su finished speaking, he didn't rush to take the conversation. On the contrary, Dong Zhuo noticed that the atmosphere at the scene was a bit off. He said, the name is just a name, there's nothing to be alarmed about. Moreover, if General Xiang is really after Xiang Yu, the hegemon of Western Chu, it would be a beautiful thing. If the hegemon knew that his descendants could also have such a powerful talent, he would be able to rest in peace in the spring. At this moment, Xiang Yu remained silent, with a strange expression on his face. However, it was difficult to say exactly where the strangeness lay. If Xiang Yu had faced this situation back then, he would not have remained silent. At this moment, Xiang Yu's mind had quietly undergone some changes, perhaps his past experiences had made him more mature. Jia Su saw that Xiang Yu had no intention of replying, and a slight sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. However, since Dong Zhuo was fully protecting Xiang Yu, Jia Su did not continue to inquire. Overall, the farewell banquet for Xiang Yu continued in a relatively pleasant atmosphere. However, the alcohol tolerance of Xiang Yu's body is still slightly lower than his former self, and he cannot drink alone to a group of people anymore. Nevertheless, his current alcohol tolerance is really not small. Through this banquet, Xiang Yu further got to know some people around Dong Zhuo, and the one who left the deepest impression on him was naturally this Jia Su. In his past life, Xiang Yu had also encountered some very intelligent people, but for Xiang Yu, he never liked to deal with these people. Xiang Yu himself was not actually a fool, and his stepfather Fan Zheng had given him many good suggestions, which he actually did not completely understand. It's just that Xiang Yu's personality is unwilling to do it, just like before the Hongmen banquet, Fan Zheng told Xiang Yu to kill Liu Bang very decisively, no matter what method is used. As long as Liu Bang dies, there are very few people who can threaten Xiang Yu. However, Xiang Yu hesitated and cared about his reputation. After all, Liu Bang was the first person to enter Guanzhong at that time. If according to the statement put forward by King Huai of Chu at the time, Liu Bang should have been granted the title of Guanzhong king. If he not only did not grant him the title but also killed him without any reason, it would still attract objections from other kings in the world. Xiang Yu is just too concerned about his reputation. If he wants to kill Liu Bang, he needs to get a Xiang Zhuang sword dance. Otherwise, Xiang Yu will do it himself, and any number of guards around Liu Bang will be in vain. Xiang Yu's approach of extracting people and heads from the army is like exploring a bag to extract things, and there is no need for other means. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Night Attack. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Night Attack. Before dawn, Xiang Yu had already woken up from his dream. For him, since his soul occupied this body, he had been troubled by various dreams. In his past life, he had not never dreamed, but at that time, he often wandered between different battlefields, and his nighttime dreams were mostly related to killing enemies on the battlefield. But there are mainly two aspects to his dreams in this life. One is that his past experiences and memories are transformed into dreams. No matter how brave and skilled he was in battle, how invincible he was in the world, even if he never suffered a defeat before the last battle, it was the failure of this last battle that left him unforgettable. The suicide on the banks of the Wujiang River that day not only did not free him from the humiliation of defeat forever, but also continued this humiliation until now. For a period of time, he would dream day and night of the desolate scene of bidding farewell to his concubine. Although he had experienced so many glorious and magnificent peak moments in his life, only this last battle remained unforgettable to him. Moreover, the more he had won before, the greater the damage the failure of this battle would cause him. Even now, the imprint of this psychology seems indelible, and he has no way to escape. Later on, he dreamt of the many pains that the owner of this body had experienced during his lifetime, which were the true pains of an ordinary person, a powerless and insignificant ordinary person. However, it was obvious that no matter how much Xiang Yu dreamt of these pains, he could not truly experience the pain and despair of the owner of this body in the depths of his heart. Perhaps it was because there was already a more painful thing in his heart that had been occupying it, making it difficult for other pains to touch the depths of his soul. The sky was not yet bright, but he couldn't sleep anymore. He walked out of the camp alone and saw the stars covered in the sky. He was a hero of the same generation as in his previous life, and after death, he couldn't transform into a brilliant star in the sky. He could only become a lonely soul wandering in the world. An unprecedented sense of loneliness swept over, and what was the point of winning the world? His old rival Liu Bang had already won the world, and now, with the nearly 400-year-old Han Dynasty, he is also on a path of no return. The so-called heroes are only temporary, and what is the point of dominating the world? If someone who knew Xiang Yu in a previous life knew that Xiang Yu had such thoughts in his heart at this time, he would surely be amazed. Xiang Yu himself couldn't help but laugh at the bright moon and starry sky. Although he didn't sleep well, he was so clear-headed now. He realized that compared to the vast sky, sun, moon, and stars, this life and all living beings on the earth were ants. He once saw everyone else as ants, but in the end, he finally understood that he himself was just an ant. "Come and drink with me." Xiang Yu summoned the soldiers standing guard around and asked them to boil several cans of sake, then cut some dried lamb and sit in a circle. The soldiers dare not speak, nor drink or eat meat. "What are you waiting for? Drink and eat quickly, I'll take you to do something big later." Xiang Yu picked up the wine jar and started drinking heavily without saying a word. "Do something big. General Xiang, are we the only ones enough?" "Enough, just about 10 of you are enough. Drink and eat quickly, and we'll be able to come back victorious before dawn." A few soldiers, "Look at me, look at you." They looked at each other and didn't know what to do, as if what Xiang Yu was talking to them was just drunk nonsense. But they didn't dare to confront Xiang Yu head-on. He always speaks his mind in the army. Except for 3 or 5 soldiers who continued to stand guard in the camp, the remaining 9 soldiers, including Xiang Yu, set off from the camp after 10 horses touched the darkness. At this time, the vast majority of the soldiers in the camp were still in a deep sleep. They had been marching north for several consecutive days, and both the soldiers and the horses were actually a bit tired. The rebels of the southern Xiongnu were very cunning. When Xiang Yu came with a cavalry team of 200 people, they did not choose to engage in direct combat. Instead, they separated their troops and wandered around the grasslands, making Xiang Yu's troops unsure of where their main force was. The rebellious southern Xiongnu army itself had a relatively small number of people, not exceeding 1,000 at best, and most of them were still herders. Most of the herders were skilled in horseback riding, armed as rebels, and disarmed as herders. Often, they were also quite confusing, making it difficult for Xiang Yu's troops to make correct judgments. So when Xiang Yu gathered all his troops to search for the southern Xiongnu rebels to the north, they hid from Xiang Yu. When Xiang Yu divided his troops into several to search for the rebels, these rebels could always find opportunities to launch surprise attacks. As the saying goes, the enemy is in the dark and we are in the light. On the grasslands, these Xiongnu people's territory, coupled with the lack of practical experience of the soldiers led by Xiang Yu, suffered a lot of hidden losses. Although Xiang Yu's ability and experience in leading the army in battle are very strong, there is still an indescribable feeling when facing the small guerrilla warfare tactics of these nomadic ethnic groups. No matter how much it is consumed, it will inevitably lead to a continuous decline in the morale of the entire army, and may even lead to collapse. As Xiang Yu in his previous life knew, sometimes having an advantage in numbers on the battlefield can be advantageous, but sometimes it can actually be a disadvantage. At this time, Xiang Yu and his 10 cavalry were rapidly approaching a camp of the southern Xiongnu. In fact, Xiang Yu was not aware of the existence of a South Xiongnu camp here before. He completely judged based on his own experience and intuition that there may be a South Xiongnu camp nearby. During the day, these nomadic tribes may be able to ride horses and run around as a whole, but at night they still need to find a place to rest. If there were too many people, it was easy to be discovered by these Xiongnu people with extremely rich wilderness survival experience. However, Xiang Yu only carried these few riders and tied a cloth on the hooves of the horse to reduce his running sound as much as possible. In addition, it was already late at night and not far from sunrise, and the vast majority of Xiongnu's sentry soldiers were also close to falling asleep. At this moment, Xiang Yu and his group rushed out of the darkness and straight into the tent of the Xiongnu people. They each held a torch and lit the tent, and many Xiongnu people were engulfed by the flames in their sleep. The Xiongnu people who rushed out of the camp in fear were about to face Xiang Yu's thunderbolt gun before they could equip their armor and weapons. One of the unlucky ones was pierced directly into the neck by the thunderbolt gun, and immediately blood spurted out, dying to the point of death. Although the camp of the Xiongnu was not large, there were at least 100 or so people. At this moment, they were killed by Xiang Yu and his group of 10 cavalry, and their armor was thrown away. In the middle of the camp, there emerged a strong and fierce-looking person. He had no hair on his head, and his mouth was exposed with yellow teeth. He shouted loudly at Xiang Yu not far away. The good horse under Xiang Yu's crotch was lost balance under this roar, and he suddenly fell off his horse. Xiang Yu rolled up, only to see the Xiongnu man open his arms and charge towards him without any armor or weapons. As he approached, he picked up a two-handed axe from the ground, but could easily wave it with just one hand, demonstrating his immense strength. Xiang Yu thrust his gun forward straight into the opponent's forehead, but was blocked by the Xiongnu's strong man with a large axe. The tip of the thunderbolt collided with the axe, making a piercing sound, and then the axe pushed the muzzle of the gun away. Xiang Yu withdrew his gun's momentum, and he could feel that his body now had a certain gap in absolute strength compared to the opponent. If there was no advantage or confidence in fighting head-on, defeating the opponent would require some combat skills. The opponent's movements came to mind in Xiang Yu's mind, and he quickly found the weakness of this Xiongnu strong man, which was his slow turning speed and the existence of large attack and defense blind spots. If it were only to deal with this Xiongnu strong man alone, it would not be difficult to say. However, at this moment, there were other Xiongnu soldiers wearing armor and weapons constantly surrounding them, attacking Xiang Yu and the others. Their advantage was to catch the opponent off guard, but after the opponent blocked the early attack, they had an absolute advantage in numbers and were on their territory. Once they were surrounded by them, it would be more ominous. Xiang Yu keenly realized that showing off his courage for a while was not what he should do now, and in fact, they had already achieved considerable results in this trip. It was better to take it as soon as it was good and look for better opportunities after returning. Faced with the Xiongnu soldiers constantly besieging him, Xiang Yu waved his thunderbolt gun and launched a sweeping army around him. Several Xiongnu soldiers didn't have time to avoid being knocked down by long spears, and Xiang Yu didn't want to fight either. He took the opportunity to find a loophole and broke out of the encirclement, riding on his good horse. Then, he led a group of riders to charge and finally rushed towards the direction where the sun was about to rise. Xiang Yu turned around and counted slightly. There were also 5 riders following behind him, which was a total of 4 of the 9 people following him. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Mastery of Things. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Mastery of Things. At that time, the southern Xiongnu was the Chang Canal. Since the late Eastern Han Dynasty, the southern Xiongnu gradually fell into various internal and external contradictions. Its existence was initially due to the cooling climate in the north and the sharp deterioration of the living environment, which led to some Xiongnu people migrating southward into the territory of the Eastern Han Dynasty and exchanging living space and material support by surrendering to the central rule of the Eastern Han Dynasty. The southern Xiongnu retained the political ruling system of Xiang and most of the Xiongnu, but were also subject to strict control from the Eastern Han Dynasty. In the early Eastern Han Dynasty, the southern Xiongnu played an important role as a barrier between the Han Dynasty and the northern Xiongnu in defending the border. However, as the natural environment in the north further deteriorated, some northern Xiongnu people continued to migrate south to join the southern Xiongnu, while the remaining northern Xiongnu were forced to abandon their original land and migrate to West Asia and even Europe under the continuous attacks of the Eastern Han Dynasty, southern Xiongnu, Wuhuan, and Xianbei. After the power of the northern Xiongnu gradually disintegrated, the existence of the southern Xiongnu itself became less important than it was at the beginning, and the Eastern Han Dynasty, considering some lessons learned from the previous Western Han period and the Xiongnu, never wanted to see the unification and integration between the southern Xiongnu and the northern Xiongnu complete. The Xiongnu people who fled in large numbers from the northern Xiongnu to the southern Xiongnu in the mid to late period of the Eastern Han Dynasty were called the newly surrendered Hu. They were initially forced to live in the area north of the southern Xiongnu, and after many years of living together, although these newly surrendered Hu had already merged with the original political life system of the southern Xiongnu, they were still under strict control from the Eastern Han Dynasty. As a result, there were irreparable cracks and contradictions between these newly surrendered Hu, the southern Xiongnu, and the Eastern Han Dynasty. In the 5th year of the Yongyuan era, after the death of the 8th Xiang of the southern Xiongnu, a serious chaos broke out within the southern Xiongnu, ultimately leading to the departure of over 200,000 newly surrendered Hu people from the southern Xiongnu. They broke through the blockade line of the Eastern Han Dynasty, and finally crossed the Yin Mountain and headed north into the grasslands. This crisis was known as the Chaos of Time. After the mid to late period of the Eastern Han Dynasty, the intervention of the southern Xiongnu by the Eastern Han Dynasty became more and more rigorous. From never intervening in the succession of Xiang to repeatedly intervening in the succession of Xiang to the southern Xiongnu, the existence of the Eastern Han Dynasty actually led to a continuous decline in the control ability of Xiang over the entire southern Xiongnu tribe. And when Xiang control over the southern Xiongnu declined, he further relied on intervention from the Eastern Han Dynasty, leading to a vicious cycle that constantly triggered internal rebellions within the southern Xiongnu. This situation had become increasingly severe by the end of the Eastern Han Dynasty, when Xiang's internal control over the southern Xiongnu was already very weak. The southern Xiongnu themselves were not numerous, so their number of rebels was also very limited. Moreover, the rebellion itself was often scattered, and the internal governance structure of the Xiongnu was much looser than that of the Central Plains dynasty. Except for monthly meetings and some particularly important events, each tribe would gather together under the call of Xiang. More often than not, each tribe does its own thing and does not intervene too much in these tribes alone. Therefore, many times the rebellions of the southern Xiongnu are difficult to achieve a permanent resolution. Perhaps the rebellion has just been completed here today, and in a few days, someone from another tribe will rebel again. Therefore, suppressing rebellion itself is a long-term and arduous task. Of course, for ordinary soldiers who aspire to kill enemies and make achievements, this task is often one of the few opportunities they can seize to change their own destiny. Dong Zhuo did not send his trusted generals to carry out this rebellion mission, but instead sent Xiang Yu, who was young and lacked achievements in the background. It must be said that he also had many considerations of his own. On the one hand, it is definitely to train Xiang Yu, and at the same time, to evaluate his training achievements over the past 2 years. At the same time, it is also to allow Xiang Yu to win certain military achievements through this opportunity, which will make it more convenient for him to seek higher military ranks or even titles for Xiang Yu in the central government in the future. To some extent, Dong Zhuo is actually a good boss, and he has always been very generous towards his loyal subordinates. The southern Xiongnu rebels were attacked by 10 cavalry led by Xiang Yu in their camp. After returning, Xiang Yu rewarded the 5 surviving subordinates, and many other soldiers expressed their determination and thoughts to join Xiang Yu in the battle. But Xiang Yu was not in a hurry at this moment. He just instructed his subordinates to continue camping in their original positions, neither continuing to advance northward nor doing anything else, even stopping the daily training that was originally necessary. This situation lasted for several days, during which time some scouts sent by the southern Xiongnu rebels would occasionally observe nearby. On that night, suddenly, the outside of the tent shouted loudly, as if an enemy was attacking under the cover of darkness. However, after a while, only the sound of shouting to kill could be heard, and no enemy was actually attacking. Xiang Yu quickly dressed up and walked out of the tent, and from a distance, he could see many torches shining in the distance, seemingly moving away. General Xiang, these Xiongnu rebels are really cunning. They use the night to approach our tent, creating a false impression of attacking but not actually launching an attack. It's obvious that they want to confuse us. A deputy general under Xiang Yu said. Xiang Yu felt that what he said made some sense. Send me a command, the whole army is on guard, and no one is allowed to go out without authorization to face the battle. General Xiang, they are clearly using a set of deceitful tactics that are both virtual and real, using feints to make us nervous. We are afraid that they will make another feint attack in the future. After a few attempts, our soldiers will inevitably be exhausted, and they will be waiting for us to be overwhelmed. Therefore, my subordinates believe that we must find an opportunity to take the lead in attacking or temporarily withdraw our troops. Xiang Yu glared at the adjutant, who was really scared by Xiang Yu's glare. You just need to arrange more people to strengthen your vigilance, and I'll have to deal with the rest. After finishing speaking, Xiang Yu turned around and walked towards the central tent, leaving the deputy general hanging in mid-air, as if wanting to say something more, but unable to speak. The next day, Xiang Yu ordered everything to continue as usual. No matter what tricks the southern Xiongnu rebels were doing outside, they would not react. If the southern Xiongnu rebels really launched a large-scale attack, they would immediately counterattack. If the southern Xiongnu were just feinting, they would be allowed to perform. After such repeated attacks, the southern Xiongnu rebels actually launched 2 more feints. At this time, Xiang Yu ordered his soldiers to maintain a high level of vigilance at all times and be prepared to engage in battle with the southern Xiongnu rebels. At this moment, many of Xiang Yu's soldiers felt a bit strange, especially the deputy general who often followed Xiang Yu. Xiang Yu saw his confusion and said, "You'll know soon." The deputy general had no choice but to suppress his doubts and strengthen the defense of the camp as ordered by Xiang Yu, so that the soldiers could be prepared for battle at any time. Another late night, the southern Xiongnu rebels attacked again at night. However, unlike the previous times when they shouted loudly and with astonishing momentum, their arrival was somewhat quiet. Hundreds of cavalry came from the darkness and only released their charge as they approached, heading straight towards the camp of Xiang Yu's troops. This attack finally seemed to be a real joke. The deputy general exclaimed in surprise upon seeing the situation, and it was unclear whether he was surprised by Xiang Yu's accurate prediction. He seemed to have anticipated the opponent's attack in advance. Despite the fierce attack from the opponent, Xiang Yu's soldiers were already prepared to face the battle. The camping site they chose had high slopes on both sides, which was not conducive to cavalry charging. Xiang Yu directly ordered a passage to be opened up, allowing the cavalry of the southern Xiongnu rebels to smoothly charge into the camp. At this moment, the archers who had already been arranged on the high slopes on both sides quietly poked their heads out, and 2 rounds of bows and crossbows slashed through the pitch-black night, shooting towards the position where the southern Xiongnu cavalry had entered. The southern Xiongnu rebel cavalry, who had originally attacked at night, were already in full swing. They thought that Xiang Yu's troops were so weak that the camp had no defense at all. When their hearts were filled with arrogance, ruthless and cold arrows pierced through their thin layer of leather armor and penetrated into their flesh and blood. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Pocket Formation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Pocket Formation. Not good, we're in ambush. At first, the rebels of the southern Xiongnu realized that the situation was not quite right. But even though a few people realized that it was an ambush, they couldn't stop their comrades from rushing into Xiang Yu's camp. On the pitch-black desert grassland, numerous war horses roared, soldiers shouted and burned torches intertwined, as well as blood and screams, all of which made up this painting of this moment. Years later, Xiang Yu had someone really paint this scene, and of course, there were also many other important moments painted at that time. The painter drew everything based on Xiang Yu's memories and descriptions. Whether those paintings were really similar is no longer important, but what is important is that they represent some very important moments for Xiang Yu. Xiang Yu led his troops to attack from the flank, with his primary goal being to concentrate his forces and attack the entrance of the camp, temporarily cutting off the connection between the southern Xiongnu rebels inside and outside the camp. Once this was successfully achieved, the enemies entering the camp would be surrounded on all sides. As the saying goes, soldiers are unpredictable and water is unpredictable. Many times, on the battlefield, soldiers should be able to quickly gather and spread like water, form a combat formation that benefits oneself. Previously, when Xiang Yu was training his soldiers, he divided them into 2 units for training, and this was an excellent time to test this tactical arrangement. 2 soldiers from each combat unit held shields and spears respectively, facing the enemy on both sides with their backs against each other, while surrounding the South Xiongnu rebels who had already entered the camp. On one side, they prevented other southern Xiongnu rebels outside the camp from providing support. This tactic is very adventurous because in fact, it also results in each combat unit facing tremendous pressure from both sides. Therefore, this tactic cannot be used from the beginning, but requires Xiang Yu to lead a pointed cavalry unit to charge the enemy's array out of a sufficiently wide gap, and then let such 2-person teams of combat units enter the gap. And once a certain area cannot withstand the pressure, other combat units around need to continue to push on. The camp of Xiang Yu's army may not be small, but it is also not big. Standing hundreds of people inside at the same time is already a bit crowded, and there is even less space for the cavalry to play. The southern Xiongnu rebels were most skilled in immediate combat. Although Xiang Yu led 200 elite cavalry selected from his own training of 500, they were still too young and had little combat experience. It was undoubtedly difficult to gain an advantage by engaging in immediate combat against them in the desert and grasslands, where the Xiongnu had lived for generations. Therefore, Xiang Yu thought that if he could lure the cavalry of these southern Xiongnu rebels into an area with limited space, it would be difficult for the cavalry to exert their mobility and impact advantages in such a tight environment. They would use infantry with shield spears to tightly encircle the enemy's cavalry from all sides, combined with bows and crossbows to continuously kill and consume the enemy's living forces at high altitudes. These cavalry of the southern Xiongnu rebels became living targets on horseback. Whether the arrows hit the horses directly or the soldiers on the horses, they were equivalent to directly eliminating a southern Xiongnu rebel cavalry. Those soldiers who fell from the horses on the ground may not even have their bodies intact under the trampling of other horses around them. follow me and charge together." Xiang Yu roared, leaping onto his good horse, raised his thunderbolt, and rushed out ahead of him. Behind him was a cavalry team of about 20 people, like sharp knives piercing straight into the enemy's flank from the side. "What ambush! Don't disturb the morale of the army, kill me." The leader of the southern Xiongnu rebel army also shouted, and continued to charge towards the depths of Xiang Yu's camp with his cavalry. As a result, many cavalry were blocked and tripped by the horses and ropes that had already been prepared on their way forward. Then, the soldiers in Xiang Yu's camp rushed out of the camp armed with spears. Upon closer inspection, there were still many sharp iron nails on the ground, causing the warhorses to scream in pain as they stepped on them, causing many of the cavalry on their backs to fall heavily. In this situation, horseback riding was not only an advantage, but also a disadvantage. Some of the southern Xiongnu rebel cavalry took out crossbows and arrows to shoot around, but in the darkness, they could hardly aim. Moreover, Xiang Yu's ambushed troops around were equipped with large shields, spears, horse spears, and bows and crossbows. At the beginning, these southern Xiongnu rebel cavalry did not realize they had rushed into an ambush. With a wave of blood and courage, they took advantage of the darkness to try to eliminate all of Xiang Yu's troops in one fell swoop in the camp. They didn't just randomly choose an opportunity to launch an attack. It should be noted that these southern Xiongnu rebels have been searching for opportunities during this period. The previous 3 feints and repeated scouts were all aimed at ensuring the complete defeat of the troops led by Xiang Yu in World War I. However, in the eyes of Xiang Yu, who had extremely rich combat experience, their plans were completely insignificant. It was like being able to directly see the points when losing color. If they did something, Xiang Yu could guess their next few steps or even all the steps. In this situation, Xiang Yu simply came up with a strategy. The soldiers he led were all very young, but their weapons and equipment were quite good. After investigation, the southern Xiongnu rebels quickly discovered this. They did not engage in direct combat with Xiang Yu's troops at the beginning. The important reason was that the weapons and equipment of these southern Xiongnu rebels were not good, and they did not have an advantage in terms of combat personnel. Their main advantage is that the battlefield they are familiar with is the desert grassland, and as the attacking side and defending side, Xiang Yu can completely try to control the initiative of the battle in their familiar territory, and they have indeed done so. From beginning to end, everything they do is to fully control the initiative of the battle. That night, Xiang Yu's army of only 10 cavalry directly broke into one of the major camps of the southern Xiongnu rebels at night. Although they were caught off guard, the number of troops led by Xiang Yu was limited, and the actual damage caused was also limited. And this night attack also provided a wonderful reference answer for these southern Xiongnu rebels. Their subsequent feints were all prepared for this final night attack. However, they certainly could not have imagined that all of this was expected by Xiang Yu, and their carefully planned night attack became a kind of self-trap. At this point, these southern Xiongnu rebel cavalry did not even know that they had entered an ambush. Even if a few clever ones noticed this, their words would be seen as disturbing the morale of the army. If they had to say a few more words, they might have been stabbed in the back by their comrades. Some of the cavalry at the forefront were blocked, and they found that they couldn't move at all, while the cavalry behind them was still charging forward. As a result, some unlucky guys were tricked by their teammates who came from behind. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Is Wolf is Dog? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 is Wolf is Dog, Kill with Me. Today is a great opportunity for you to make achievements. Xiang Yu shouted loudly and rushed to the front. After 2 years of rigorous or even somewhat rigorous training, his soul had taken over this once very thin and weak body, as if it had undergone a rebirth. The exposed muscles and joints of his body were exceptionally strong, and his whole body had grown much taller. Compared to before, it had skyrocketed like blowing a balloon. Kill me. With such a shout, Xiang Yu felt as if all the rebellious forces of the southern Xiongnu in front of him had become movable military achievements. As a result, the troops behind Xiang Yu suddenly became powerful, and they followed Xiang Yu to charge forward. A little cold light comes first, and then the gun bursts out like a dragon. Xiang Yu rode up to the front of the enemy's warhorse, and his gun thrust from bottom to top, breaking the front leg of an enemy warhorse. The horse's body tilted forward, making it difficult for the rebels on its back to control its body. Then, Xiang Yu stabbed it again, piercing a bloody hole in his chest. Xiang Yu's initial momentum was very rapid, and he immediately gave the surrounding southern Xiongnu rebel cavalry a commanding edge. Morale and momentum were extremely important on the battlefield, and the presence of a fierce general could deter the enemy and inspire allies on the battlefield through his strong combat power and momentum. After a moment, Xiang Yu didn't hesitate to continue moving forward. The rebel forces around him didn't dare to take it lightly when they saw him approaching fiercely. Immediately, a group of cavalry soldiers targeted Xiang Yu, all of whom were skilled in horsemanship. Although the combat effectiveness of the southern Xiongnu had declined over the past 100 years and was inferior to that of Emperor Wu of the Western Han Dynasty, they were still a nation on horseback. The mastery of equestrianism flows through their bloodline. They launched a joint attack, trying to block Xiang Yu's fierce assault with the help of a large number of people. Xiang Yu did not engage in hard work, but instead prepared to rely on his excellent combat skills to win. At this time, he did not have the physical fitness of a deity like in his previous life, but it also forced him to focus more on the use of combat skills and military tactics. In his past life, he understood how important it was to learn the knowledge of 10,000 enemies from a very young age. At that time, Xiang Yu, who was still very young, felt that neither swordsmanship nor marksmanship were useful, and he was not very interested in learning these combat skills. On the contrary, he had a very strong interest in military tactics that could 10,000 enemies. However, it was this young man who was not very interested in combat skills. Later, he also honed his unparalleled combat skills on real battlefields. Perhaps some things are originally a kind of talent, and learning after birth can help you improve to a certain extent, but truly talented people are like cheating, they can become the strongest in the world without special training. However, Xiang Yu now cares more about training compared to his past life. After all, he has lost the extraordinary talent of his past life. If he wants to become invincible in the world, he needs to put in more effort in combat skills and strategic tactics. Speaking of which, these hundreds of years of vicissitudes have ultimately led to many changes in his stubbornness. Faced with the siege of multiple opponents, Xiang Yu remained calm at all. In fact, the more intense the battle, the more calm he became. His attention was highly focused, and the time around him seemed to freeze. Time flowed much slower, and the movements of the enemy waving weapons became like slow movements. "General Xiang, be careful." A soldier behind Xiang Yu shouted loudly and used his bow and arrow to shoot down an enemy soldier from his horse. This guy was just behind Xiang Yu's side, possibly in his blind spot. Xiang Yu was slightly taken aback, but did not stop his movements. He lowered his head and keenly avoided the attack in front of him, and almost immediately made a counterattack. The thunderbolt gun fiercely faced the enemy's attack, finding an opportunity to attack from the gaps between these attacks. The sharp tip of the gun was like a thunderbolt in the sky, piercing through the chest of a rebel with tremendous energy. The rebels who were stabbed jumped off their horses before they could even let out a scream. Xiang Yu's attack was fierce and deadly, like the most deadly venomous snake that could inflict fatal damage on its opponents every time it exits. The remaining southern Xiongnu rebel cavalry around were stunned by Xiang Yu's swift attack. They had never seen such a swift, decisive, and deadly attack before. You should know that many of them were just ordinary herdsmen not long ago, and the reason why they participated in the rebellion was actually due to many unavoidable difficulties. With the decline of the prestige of the southern Xiongnu's Chanyu rule day by day, many ordinary southern Xiongnu people felt that they were living a very humiliating life. A large part of this humiliation came from their Chanyu submission to the Eastern Han Dynasty, which can even be said to be surrender. In their hearts, This kind of Xiang Yu is nothing more than a puppet, a spokesperson and tool used by the Eastern Han Dynasty to rule them, and their ancestors, the Xiongnu people who lived in the truly vast desert and grassland, and those who dared to compete with the powerful Qin Dynasty and the tough Xiongnu people of the Western Han Dynasty hundreds of years ago, can be called true Xiongnu people. So they launched a rebellion, not only to break away from the rule of Xiang Yu and the Eastern Han Dynasty, but more importantly to regain the pride and blood of those who seem to have gradually disappeared in the river of time as true Xiongnu people. They are a people riding on horseback, a pack of wolves in the desert, a nomadic people wandering in the boundless desert and grassland, not farmers confined to the land, let alone dogs after being tamed. They want to be wolves again. Even if they really tried to be a dog for a while. But deep down they are still wolves, not dogs. During this period of rebellion, many of them felt a sense of liberation, a feeling of finally being able to no longer be dogs but bravely tell the world that they were a wolf on the grassland. This feeling is indescribable. It is a recognition of one's own ancestors, bloodline, and cultural heritage. They are Xiongnu people, whether it's the northern Xiongnu or the southern Xiongnu, they are all true Xiongnu people. However, at this moment, when they faced Xiang Yu and saw his bloodshot eyes from the slaughter, their pack of wolves began to feel scared because Xiang Yu was like a fierce tiger, and even the strongest wolf could only escape with its tail between its legs. Although there were still many southern Xiongnu rebels constantly attacking Xiang Yu, as Xiang Yu skillfully beheaded the people in front of him one after another, an instinctive fear and desire for survival gradually took over, making them realize that their descendants of wolves may have truly degenerated during the domestication process of the Eastern Han Dynasty over the past 100 years. At least a portion may have truly degenerated into dogs. They did not retreat, still bravely charging towards Xiang Yu, but it was obvious that their speed had slowed down, and hesitation appeared in their eyes. The horses under their crotch began to be less obedient. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Past and Present Lives. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Past and Present Lives. Life and Death. Every living creature yearns to firmly grasp its own destiny, but the vast majority of people cannot truly achieve this. Born in a chaotic world, it is difficult to say who truly holds control of one's own life and death, as well as the lives and deaths of others. In this darkness and flickering flames, many people's lives are forever frozen in this moment, disappearing from this world forever. Perhaps some tenacious souls will still exist after leaving their bodies, but they either quickly dissipate between heaven and earth, or transform into wandering ghosts in the world. A little resentment and obsession in their hearts make them unwilling to leave. Not every lonely soul and wild ghost can have the opportunity to return in such a way as Xiang Yu. In fact, the owner of Xiang Yu's body, Zhou, used a magic technique to summon Xiang Yu's soul into his body at the cost of burning his own soul. This behavior itself violates the natural laws between heaven and earth. Therefore, during the process of Xiang Yu's soul merging with this body, some potential and terrifying things have also emerged, but Xiang Yu has not yet realized their existence. Killing has never been an instinct of humans, but survival is an instinct of humans, just like all animals between heaven and earth. In a world where survival can only be achieved through killing, when killing and survival are equated, killing becomes an instinct. This terrible world will not become better because of your kindness, nor will it become worse because of your slaughter, especially when you are not strong enough. You have no right to choose kindness, let alone the power to decide their life and death. Sometimes killing may not necessarily be a form of kindness. Heaven and earth are inhumane, treating all things as cut dogs. Heaven treats every living creature equally, returning to where it comes from. Birth, aging, illness, and death are the inevitable fate of all life, and the birth and continuation of new life are based on the death of old life. The birth and process of every life are unequal, but their ultimate destination is equal. The soul eventually turns into nothingness, and the body is either swallowed or turned into dust over time. When heaven feels that this old world is about to perish, it will bring disaster and the god of death. It will harvest souls full of sin, but also innocent souls. But is there really anyone who is completely innocent? Is an avalanche the fault of any snowflake? No, it's caused by the collective force of all snowflakes. Who caused the collapse and destruction of this world? No, it was caused by everyone together. No one can be alone. This is the way of heaven and earth. The way of heaven and earth is not about right or wrong, it only concerns the difference between conforming to the way of heaven and disobeying it. Whether it was Xiang Yu in his past life or now, there was actually a demon living deep inside him. In his past life, he was like a dragon-slaying hero. The corrupt and cruel Qin dynasty in the early days was that evil dragon. At that time, Xiang Yu, like many people who rebelled against the tyrannical Qin dynasty at that time, was a hero of the times. With their joint efforts, they finally successfully destroyed the tyrannical Qin dynasty. During the process of overthrowing the Qin dynasty, as his own strength continued to grow, his inner self was also constantly changing to some extent. Although he had unparalleled personal abilities and the ability to command battles, his negative personality traits such as stubbornness, cruelty, and indecisiveness gradually emerged. His behavior of constantly slaughtering cities and killing generals also reflected the immature side of him, who was too young at the time. When a person's growth process is too smooth, it often leads to certain flaws in their personality. To some extent, it is because Xiang Yu is too powerful, too invincible, and his incredible victories in every battle make his heart too inflated. He does not consider anyone else, whether it is his devoted father Fan Zheng or those potential huge threats like Liu Bang. Xiang Yu has never considered anyone else, and his arrogance stem from his excessive strength and success. Perhaps even if he could have suffered some setbacks earlier in his life, his personality would not have grown so extreme, let alone give up hope after suffering the only failure in life. He would rather commit suicide in Wujiang than return to Jiangdong and wait for the opportunity to rise again. At this time, Xiang Yu's soul, after experiencing hundreds of years of ups and downs, was tortured countless times by the experiences of his past life. He also asked himself many times, if there were more would the result be different? So now Xiang Yu seems to have lost a bit of his previous life's arrogance and domineering aura, but has gained a bit of composure and decisiveness. Perhaps this can be considered a kind of growth and maturity. Killing has never been a difficult thing for him, it is almost an instinct. In his past life, he even enjoyed killing itself very much, but for him at this time, killing itself can no longer cause any emotional fluctuations in his heart, and a feeling of longing for redemption arises deep inside him. In his past life, he was originally walking on a path to salvation, but in the end, he went astray and forgot his original intention. He changed from a person who resisted cruel rule to a person who imposed cruel rule. Can he still choose a different path now? Fearless, meaningless, indifferent. Xiang Yu is fearless, considering life and death beyond the heavens, meaningless, indifferent to the way of heaven and humanity, he only wants to follow his own path. One shot, one horse, one person can dominate the world. Who can compete with them? On the battlefield, Xiang Yu abandoned distractions, with only enemies in his eyes and only victory and defeat in his heart. In the darkness, he wielded his spear and rode forward without hesitation. A random arrow came from an unknown source and hit Xiang Yu's left shoulder, piercing through the fine scale armor on his body. However, as if nothing had happened, he broke the handle of the arrow and continued to kill with his injuries. The rebels of the southern Xiongnu had never seen such a brave person as Xiang Yu before, like the demon of Shura who had descended. There was an indescribable aura around his body, even in the darkness, one could feel it from afar. Many of the war horses under the rebels of the southern Xiongnu became uncontrollable, howling uncontrollably, stopping their progress, and even faintly wanting to turn around. The small group of cavalry led by Xiang Yu successfully tore open a gap among the Xiongnu rebels, and then continued to charge forward along this torn gap. Taking advantage of the confusion caused by this round of charge on the southern Xiongnu rebels, Xiang Yu began to follow the cavalry into the battlefield, wielding a shield and spear and forming a team of 2 combat units. They fill the space left by the cavalry in front as quickly as possible, and then face attacks from both sides of the enemy at the same time. For them, this task is extremely difficult, and they do not need to cause much damage to the enemy. The most important thing is to hold on to the position and drag down the enemy on both sides for as long as possible. Undoubtedly, it takes a lot of courage to carry out this task. As every soldier, we must believe in ourselves, and even more so, in our teammates who are back with us. They are each other's backs, their reliance, and the hope to survive on the cruel battlefield. When the 2 rows of soldiers holding shields and spears formed a complete formation, the southern Xiongnu rebels on both sides began to panic. The ones inside lost their retreat and the ones outside lost their way forward. They fought hard to attack but found that the 2 shield walls in front of them were so strong. The quality of formation on ancient battlefields often had an unimaginable huge impact on the outcome of combat, because in the era of cold weapons, the attack range of combat was often very limited. When soldiers fought against each other, only the front row of soldiers could participate in the battle, and no matter how many soldiers there were in the future, they could not participate in the battle. So ancient people began to study various combat formations very early on, with the aim of forming as many formations as possible in local areas and striking as few as possible. In order to counter certain formations, other formations may be derived. The shield wall spear formation consisting of 2 rows of soldiers back can be said to be very effective against the Xiongnu rebels, who were mainly cavalry. The weapons in the hands of the Xiongnu cavalry were mainly short spears, short knives, and short axes. These weapons were difficult to break through the shield spear formation and cause substantial damage to these soldiers. Therefore, these 2 rows of soldiers successfully divided the southern Xiongnu rebels into 2 parts on the battlefield. Some of them have already entered the pocket formation waiting to be harvested, while others have not yet entered the pocket formation but are unable to enter and lend a helping hand. Next, the soldiers in the surrounding area of Xiang Yu's camp began to gradually advance from all sides towards the center, like stuffing meat, capturing all the southern Xiongnu rebels in one fell swoop. End of this chapter.